Stellar Blade is easily one of my favorite games of the past few years. When it first got announced, it felt too good to be true. It looked great, it sounded great, and Eve was, well, let's just say I have zero complaints following her around this game, and I'll leave it at that. It's also one of the only games in a really long time where once I beat the game fully, I immediately New Game Plus'd it again, and just started playing my second playthrough. I don't think I've done that a lot, maybe since the original Dark Souls or even Bloodborne. That just more so shows the quality of Stellar Blade as a game than really anything else, cause it's just excellent for the most part. Sure, it has some problems, but the good outweighs the mediocre by a large margin, so overall, it's definitely a game worth playing if you haven't already. And recently, Stellar Blade has finally come to Steam, and people were wondering, well, how did it do? Turns out, everyone's projections were wrong, but in the best way possible, as seen here. Stellar reached almost 200,000 players within its debut day on Steam. When this video comes out, this is before the weekend, so who knows, it could go even higher. But either way, Stellar Blade has had an amazing launch on Steam and is doing really well for developer ShiftUp, which makes me honestly really happy. As also seen here from Geralt of Gunia on Twitter, Stellar Blade has beaten every single PlayStation first-party release on Steam. It eclipsed the #1 spot by almost 10,000 in its debut and has now more than doubled Ghost of Tsushima at release, which was originally at first place. That is knucking futz, but it's awesome to see. Even IGN had to confirm this, where they said, the PC version of Stellar Blade is already Sony's biggest single-player Steam launch ever. Hell yeah, dude. That is what I'm talking about. Look, Stellar Blade's just awesome. It's sort of like a Souls-like meets a full-blown action game akin to something like Devil May Cry, or more so like Bayonetta. But it also sits between those kinds of games like Dark Souls in its own weird hybrid spot that just really works for it. The best parts of the game for me were the linear levels, cause I'm a sucker for good level design instead of, big open worlds these days. Although Stellar's open world is not bad either, sure, it's a little samey at times. I think there's a bit too much sand for my liking, and I do kind of wish you could ride some sort of vehicle around due to how big these sand areas can get, especially the second one you visit, but despite that, I had a lot of fun just running around, finding upgrades, and solving the puzzles to get the things around me and fighting big monsters. I also love how Eve, as in the character you play as, they don't treat you like a child either. Unlike, say, Horizon Forbidden West, that's a really good example actually, where Aloy's just constantly telling the player how to solve puzzles before you even attempt to do them. Eve instead just lets you play the game, and ShiftUp, which made the game, clearly doesn't try to make the player feel stupid, and I really appreciated that. Not saying that I'm not stupid, I am, but the thought still counts, because the game is just excellent. My one big complaint, however, is just that I wish Eve had more weapon variety types available. However, it's okay, it's the first game in the series, so it's fine. And I'm sure that a sequel will give Eve all kinds of new gear to fight with. I would love to see a spear, maybe dual blades, and of course, a massive two-hand sword that I can just crush some skulls with. But regardless, what's on offer here is still great. And when you mix in the fun skill tree, the parrying mechanic, and more, I don't know, man. I just love this game. I mean, what do you want me to say? The story is surprisingly cool too. Don't worry, no spoilers here. But the elevator pitch is simply you're playing Eve. You get sent down via a pod to Earth from your space station up high to fight these monsters that are invading Earth that are called Naytibas. And to say any more is a massive spoiler, so obviously I'll just shut up about that now. But I will say, I like the story, I like the characters, and I really enjoyed how the character designs look too, especially ones that show off certain assets, and that's putting it lightly. And then Shuhei Yoshida, who used to work at Sony for decades, said in an interview recently that Stellar Blade is one of his favorite games that Sony helped create. He spoke to Automaton.com, and that's titled, "The biggest reason for Stellar Blade's success is its combat," says former Sony chief. As Shuhei says here, as you can see, he says the combat is exceptional and rewarding, and it just feels right. And that Stellar Blade's combat to me is as natural as, say, jumping in Super Mario even, like it just makes sense from the moment you start playing the game. And the way that the game introduces new foes and threats, it just feels great and really organic. The pacing overall of Stellar Blade is just awesome. And then there's the music, which I can't put in this video because, copyright, but trust me when I say that if you liked Nier Automata, Stellar Blade is like that pretty much. Actually, Stellar Blade is a lot like Nier Automata. Maybe that's why the game is so beloved. There's just something cool about playing badass women in cool outfits just killing all sorts of monsters. It just itches that part of my brain in a way that few games can these days. Stellar Blade is still one of my favorite games of this generation so far. Because for one, it's not live service, which everyone's doing pretty much. It doesn't try to nickel and dime you 24/7 or, push nonsense down your throat. It just feels feature complete from the moment you buy and play the game. And I wish more games took that inspiration from Stellar more than anything else. But it also proves a point that Stellar Blade is truly a threat to what the journalists thought players really wanted. So, slight pivot here, but trust me, this will all make sense and it will connect back to Stellar Blade, I promise. So Jason Schreier, who notoriously said that Dragon Age Veilguard was a success, but then ended up not being one obviously, released an article recently about Veilguard's failure. And then all kinds of stuff got said in that article. It was management's fault, they didn't have enough resources or time for this or that, which is, come on man, they had 10 years to make the damn game. Anyway, long story short, Veilguard failed because of management and EA, according to Jason Schreier. Conveniently, he never one brings up the DEI stuff or anything like that, because it's obviously his religion, and Jason works for Bloomberg of all places, which is notorious for being advocates for that sort of stuff. Anyway, then Paul Tassi, a Forbes journalist, talked about Jason's piece, and he too conveniently doesn't even bring up the real reasons why stuff like Veilguard failed while Stellar Blade has done so well in comparison. Then Daniel Friedman, who's an author, chimed in on Veilguard not doing well, and here's what he said about Jason Schreier's piece. Despite all the BioWare higher-ups that he talked to, he intentionally missed the story. This game failed because it was defined in the minds of its audience by YouTubers making fun of its quests about pronouns. This is the game that proved that approval from Asmongold matters more than approval from IGN for launching a successful game. Ah yes, game failed because of Asmongold and YouTube people. Paul Tassi, that Forbes journalist, would respond to Daniel by saying this: "It's easy to push back on this, but when the woke debates consume literally an entire online marketing campaign that can in fact be damaging. And yes, Asmongold trashing something does actually matter now, like it or not, that you should cater to that, but it's where we are." Asmongold then would come out of nowhere and respond to Paul by saying this: "While I'm sure making videos is a rallying point, the reality is that most people consume content that reinforces what they already believe. There are people who adamantly defend woke games, but no one watches them because those ideas and viewpoints are inherently unpopular." And Asmongold is right. Stellar Blade right now proves this very recent exchange to be true. Why is it that games like Veilguard would fail, but stuff like Stellar Blade, a year-old game at this point, releases on Steam and then ends up blowing the hinges off the doors as soon as it lands? It's because one look at that game and you would know the developer's beliefs immediately. The same way you can go look at Veilguard and immediately tell the belief system behind that game too. Actually, here's a picture of Vindictus, that's an Asian-made game, versus Veilguard's character creator, and it tells you everything you really need to know. The point is that players are obviously sick of games like Veilguard, and Stellar Blade is instead what they really want more of, and I can't blame them, because that game is very important, especially when it first released, due to how hellbent journos were to bury Stellar Blade because of what it represented and the whole climate around it. It was too sexy, it was too crude, and didn't have the right people that these types need to validate when making this sort of stuff. And despite that, the game broke well over 1 million copies, and now with Steam releasing it too, I wouldn't be surprised if another 1 million people bought it as well. And as seen here, ShiftUp even confirmed that Stellar Blade is currently the #1 game on Steam's global top seller list, even beating new releases like Dune Awakening and others like Night Rain and more. Good, I'm glad, I'm happy for them. I'm happy that ShiftUp made games like this because we need more of it. I don't mean just games with sexy women, although I wouldn't mind, but just fun games, you know? But what Asmongold said was true, because that's what's happening right now as we speak. Look, you can complain that, oh, this group is why this game sucks, or this sucks because this content creator said this. All of it is moot and pointless. All that really matters is whether people show up or not to support the thing. If Veilguard failed and you need people to like write essays on multiple websites to explain it without saying the actual reason out loud, it just means that you're coping in the end. And look at Stellar Blade. It doesn't need that. I wonder what Jason Schreier or Paul Tassi would think of Stellar Blade's success. Is it because of the management or something? Is it because the workers gave get 8 hours of sleep, or they eat better than the Veilguard devs. No, it's simple. We all know why. They put a woman with cannons the size of melons on the screen for you to play with. They gave you a bunch of cool outfits that you can unlock in-game. They made some weird mythology around their world that's cool, and well, here's a sword in your hand, now go and have some fun. And I'm sure if you were to ask those guys why Stellar does so well, they can't bring themselves to admit that it's because it's the anti-everything that they have been conditioned to want in games and write about themselves. Look, I'm not saying we gotta bring politics into this, but let's be real, guys. If you put Veilguard and Stellar Blade up against each other, it's like day and night. It's really not hard to see why. Paul Tassi would then respond to Asmongold by saying this: the term influencer exists for a reason. People like you or Joe Rogan or whoever also shape views on topics, not just act as a mirror. On top of that, negative content will get 10 times the attention as positive, which applies to the whole anti-woke industry and why it's so successful. That's not true at all, actually. My best videos performance-wise are where I'm positive and actually celebrating games. In fact, go look at my videos over the past 2 months alone. A lot of those focus more on the industry than, say, culture war stuff, mostly anyways. And they've done better than the Gamergate stuff Paul is trying to say is the meta right now. It isn't the meta, Paul. It's very simple, and I think we can all see it. People just want coverage of games that isn't being spoon-fed to them through a carefully created, corporatized method, if you will. I love a lot of games, okay? I play them all the time. This year alone, we had Clair Obscur, Kazan, Mandragora, Tainted Grail. I'm currently playing Blades of Fire, which is a weird game, let me tell you, but I am noticing something rather cool about these games and more, which is that, if you haven't noticed, they're not pushing nonsense like last year's games did. They're just fun, just like Stellar Blade is, and that's what people want. I think journalists are just clearly bitter because the YouTuber, or maybe content creator is a better term, has replaced them largely. I don't really go to IGN for review anymore, or even Forbes. I go to certain YouTubers who specialize in that genre or game, if you will. I didn't need a reviewer to tell me if Stellar Blade was going to be good or not, because I tried the demo, and honestly, I was floored by what I played. Seriously, dude, when that demo first came out for Stellar last year, it was me having another this can't be real moment. It was the same way I felt when I first played Kena Bridge of Spirits, and I love that game, by the way. Please play it if you haven't. But anyway, it was because Stellar Blade, like Kena, it just looked too good to be true at first glance. And after beating the demo, I put my controller down and I just went, God damn, man, I want this game right now. And then I waited for release, and when it first came out, I devoured Stellar Blade like a hungry man who just saw a burger and fries after a really long shift. Like, I went crazy on it. I think I played that game for like maybe 8 or 10 hours straight a day until I beat it within a week. Not to say the Stellar Blade is short, okay? It took me like 40 something hours for his playthrough. I just love that game so much that I just no life did, much to the dismay of my girlfriend, but sorry, I had to play my video game, so Real Romance would have to be put on hold until I was done with my waifu action game. And look, I apologize to no one because I loved my time with the game. Like I said back then when it first came out, and I'll say it again, Stellar Blade is going to be a new mega hit franchise, and you can bet money on it. If Sony is smart, they will invest and shift up even further and make that partnership between them even stronger in the future. Because you see all those live service games that Sony canceled or had fail like Concord did? Yeah, we don't want those games. We want stuff like Stellar Blade. I want stuff that isn't made by people who hate me for whatever reason they can muster. It's just nice, you know, to play something and just have fun. Remember playing games and having fun? Isn't that great when that happens? Because I love it when that happens. And that's what Stellar Blade was to me. That's what I yearn for when I play games. But just to show you how tone deaf these people are when it comes to them not willing to admit their faults, Savvy would reply to Paul and Daniel Friedman about Veilguard dying and Based Games winning and all of that. Here's what she said. Get out of your pathetic little bubble. Normies have no idea or care who YouTubers are. We are all a small bubble of the market. Most people buying games globally don't care who we or Paul or anyone is. The game failed because of its complete and utter tone shift and choices the team made. That's it. Daniel Friedman would reply to Savvy with this. If normies listened to IGN, which gave Veilguard a 9 out of 10, then the game would have sold. Oh, really? Because IGN gave Stellar Blade a 7 out of 10, yet it sold better and has more respect than Veilguard Veilguard ever will. So that doesn't really make any sense, does it, Daniel? And stop trying to blame YouTubers for why these games suck. I didn't make Veilguard. Did I make Veilguard? Because I don't recall seeing my name in the credits anywhere. But I did play and 100% both Veilguard and Stellar Blade for the channel, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that Stellar Blade is a far, far superior game. Oh my god, it's not even close, dude. So here's Stellar Blade's Metacritic. It got an 82 from the critics, but a 9.2 from the fans. And here's Veilguard's 81 from the critics, and look at that user score. And you ask me, these days the user score is what really matters to someone like me, because the people who scored it from the user score are the ones who obviously paid real money to play that game. And it's just funny to me that Paul Tassi and Jason Schreier and whoever else are coping about why the games that they champion fail and the games that they push against seem to win all of the time. And the Stellar Blade PC port that comes out within days of them saying this, and then it just proves it right. It just means that people want cool games. Even Kim Hwang Tae, who's the director and owner of Shift Up that, made Stellar Blade, said this recently about the game breaking top sellers on Steam. We've come this far thanks to all of you. We were able to become one of the top global sellers on Steam thanks to the support of all of our users. We'd like to express our sincere gratitude. Wow. See how easy that was? Just say thank you. Be grateful that people showed up. And that's it. There's no controversy, there's no negativity, just positivity, and look, it's working for them. And here's Paul Tassi's newest article where he has to admit that Stellar Blade is absolutely crushing it. He even admits here how well it's doing. Look at those numbers, man. It has more than Ghost of Tsushima and God of War combined at launch. And look at how low Spider-Man 2 is on that list, 28k on Steam. Wow, no wonder when they started to push propaganda in that game that it failed too. Also, I've been holding on to this article that's been in my tab on my computer since April, for God's sakes, because I could never find a good place to put it into a video. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put it here so I can finally delete it off my computer. Thank you. But anyway, right now seems like as good a time as any. So this comes from Niche Gamer and it connects to Stellar Blade, which reads, Ghost in the Shell director Mamoru Oshii says political correctness has made Western games terrible. So Oshii spoke to PIA News and was asked about how the West handles the messaging in their games versus that of the East. And he had some things to say. Oshii would say, political correctness started from the idea of giving legitimacy to the socially weak. There is nothing wrong with that. In a mature society, it is a natural responsibility. However, the problem is that it has taken that as its starting point and made the socially weak into the strong. They were given priority in getting into school and priority in finding a job. What's more, the companies that advised them charge them ridiculous amounts in consulting fees. Game companies ask for hundreds of millions of yen from them. Basically, it's based on admiration. If you deny admiration, entertainment loses its reason for existence as entertainment. In the past, even if you said beautiful people would say it was discriminatory. Western games are really terrible political correctness. And Oshii's right. Stellar Blade conveys what he says here perfectly. It had 0 consultants. There was no need for them to be there anyway. Stellar Blade would have objectively been worse had a consultant from the West specifically worked on that game before it came out. And the reason why the game sold the way that it has and garnered the fan base that it has gained is because it was everything that Western games were not at the time. And yet, despite being a year later, when you look at those Steam numbers for it, it proves that there's a massive appetite for games like this even now. People want games devoid of politics, of all that stuff. Stellar Blade doesn't have some opinion on like the LA riots or something else. It's just a game contained to its own world, telling its own story, and that's it. And that's all it has to be. And it's that key part where Oshii said that the enjoyment of the player and the products being made are based on the concept of admiration. And look, if you deny that admiration of the player, the product, whether it's a game or something else, loses its entire reason to exist in the first place, and I agree with that. And this is why many games from the West these past few years, like Veilguard, denied your admiration, because you weren't allowed to lust for a character or say anything crude. It was all sanitized, even the conversations in the game. You couldn't be mean to anyone unless they were white pretty much, and it was to ensure that nobody who played the game was offended by it. But maybe what we needed instead was that rough edge, the ability to say things that aren't maybe politically correct like in Dragon Age Origins. Because we're people, okay? We're not robots, we're not perfect, we're gonna say and do stupid stuff as long as we live. But that's what's endearing about people too. When you play Stellar Blade, you can feel that it was made by people from South Korea, and it both looks and feels like it came from there in the best way possible. And like Oshi said, we need less political correctness in the future. We need these journalists to come to terms with the fact that what they're saying is not resonating because, like Oshi stated, they aren't doing journalism for the admiration of the viewer anymore. Instead, like the games that they are constantly defending, they're doing it to defend the so-called politically correct all of the time. It's not working, it never has, and it never will. So no matter how much you try to condition people to not like beautiful women or whatever other talking point, the human mind is gonna do what it always does. And people will enjoy it for what they love no matter what. Admiration is important, and Stellar Blade, if you ask me, it has that in excess. That's why people flock to it, not just on PlayStation, but clearly on PC too. So I hope people play that game, and if you haven't, go play it, dude. What are you even doing? It's really great, it's really fun, and most importantly, it's not going to beat you over the head with nonsense even once while playing it. And if you ask me, in a world that is filled to the brim with tons of nonsense, it's nice to just enjoy something and put your guard down every now and then. But that's all I have to say. So what do you think of Stellar Blade? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.